Hello and welcome back to Auto Nerd, episode 74 on deck today. Man, we have come a long way over the past year and a half. The past few weeks have been insanely busy, and a little update on what's going on over here at Auto Nerd, and we're going to jump right on into today's episode. We have been building out something amazing. Showed it to a few people just recently, and they were blown away by it. We're going to take the cap off of that in a few weeks, so just pay attention, and I'll tell you all about it in later episodes here. We still got some copyright stuff we're dealing with, but it is going to be awesome once it is finally done. But this past week, I spent a lot of time in meetings and didn't get a lot of time to actually work on pretty much anything, but that's okay. Saw some pretty cool stuff and heard some amazing stories about the future. Well, today I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of that. Not everything, because most of it was confidential, but I'm going to give you a taste of how the automotive industry is working to make sure that EV success in the future is going to be awesome. So here we go. I hope you enjoy this. Let's dive in. Quick question before we start here. If everything you read says the future is electrified, and you hear me say this too, why do the vehicles rolling into dealerships currently now look bigger, boxier, and tougher than ever? I mean, seriously. Lifted stands, chunky tires, roof racks that will never actually see a tent on them. And meanwhile, you look down the street and your neighbor just bought an SUV. Now, the uncomfortable economics here. Let's start with the part that no press release ever wants to actually talk about. The auto industry right now is in what analysts call stag formation, which is a very polite way of saying, hey, sales volume is not really going anywhere, but our costs are actually exploding. And everyone still expects innovation to happen on a schedule, right? Whether you're an executive, a manufacturer, or a factory, things gotta continue getting built. And building EVs is an incredibly expensive cost for every manufacturer. You got the batteries, you have new factories, new supply chains, software talent that costs way more than the entire assembly lines used to. And it's tough for a lot of people to wrap their brains around this. So here's the question that no OEM really wants to answer out loud. And I asked it a few times. Where does the money come from to fund EVs? It's obviously not coming out of affordable EVs because they just don't exist yet. It comes down to these higher margin vehicles. And nothing in the automotive industry currently today is printing more money than large SUVs. And here's the part that people don't realize. It doesn't cost much more to build an SUV than a sedan. When you really sit down and think about it, it's the same electronics, it's the same labor expenses, it's the same safety systems. It requires a little more steel and some more plastic. But the build price difference isn't much, but the price on the window sticker is massively different. Make something bigger, make it tougher, call it more capable. And suddenly customers are happy and pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more. That spread is margin. And margin is what is quietly paying for EV losses right now. And if we take a look, you'll find General Motors is booking billions in EV transaction costs. Ford, even more. Those numbers don't survive without a lifeboat. Your board is going to fillet you if you start reporting those. But SUVs, those are the lifeboat, and they have been for a very long time. Let's talk about this vibe shift that's going on in the industry. Overlanding used to be this niche thing. I loved it, and I still do today. It requires hardcore people, paper maps, jerry cans, no cell phone service, and it's super attractive to most people. But now, it's basically mainstream. Millions of people like the idea of adventure more than the reality of actually going on one. And here's the key detail about why these vehicles are being leveraged in this way. Younger buyers no longer buy vehicles as status symbols. They buy vehicles as experience enablers. I might not go off-roading every weekend, but I could. That word could is worth tons and tons of profit to you and also the OEM. But OEMs have finally realized that we're losing millions of dollars to the aftermarket. Customers bought stock in SUVs, then immediately spent 20 grand plus modifying these things, taking them pretty much everywhere. Manufacturers are finally saying, nope, we will gobble up all of that now. Factory overlanding trims are not just about utility. They're about capturing the emotional margin that people are more than willing to shell out for if that could is amplified to the point where the customer can have acceptance. But this is where it gets interesting. These bigger vehicles, they're heavier and increasingly driven by families. And this creates a bit of a problem. Big SUVs, they feel safe, but physics does not care about feelings. So safety tech has had to evolve very quickly in these areas. There's manufacturers that are now adding in knee airbags and center front seat airbags and all sorts of stuff to keep us safer. But really when it comes down to it is giving people that idea that you can go anywhere and still take your kids with you. Manufacturers today are caring more about those rear seat passengers than they are anything else. And guess who started winning in those tests first? SUVs. Not because they're tanks, but because of technology. And this is where most people actually completely misunderstand ADAS. It's not about the future of self-driving fantasies. It's about reducing cognitive load while driving. Things like lane centering, adaptive cruise systems, driver monitoring systems that are out there. These systems exist because cars have gotten a lot bigger. Interiors are more distracting. Long trips are longer for most people, and drivers are still human. And driver monitoring, well, throw it out there. It isn't really your big brother. It's realism. It's something that has to happen today. If you're tired, you're distracted, or you're overstimulated or overwhelmed, the car needs to help, and you need to help the car. And here's the underrated part. People keep these systems turned on all the time because they don't feel judged. They feel supported. And manufacturers that do it well, quite honestly, it's damn near magical for the customer. So let's zoom out a second here. The rugged SUV is not fighting for the EV future. It's just not. It can't compete, but it's funding it. And these high margin trucks and SUVs, they're paying for the battery research. They're paying for the factory retooling. They're paying for software development and the slow transition away from the internal combustion. So the loud, boxy, adventure branded vehicle, that's the customer making an investment into the quiet electric future that they don't really even know that they're funding. And for me personally, I have to laugh a little bit because I know darn well that V8 person that's just like, oh, everybody's going to a 4-cylinder turbo or V6s or what have you, or down with EV. They're actually funding that EV future in a very aggressive way. You see, the future of mobility is just not a straight line, and it never has been. It's a strange, profitable, mud-covered bridge that we need to find some way to get through. And every so often, it's incredibly tough. So the next time you see a lifted SUV with skid plates under it that will never scrape the ground, just know that vehicle might actually be the reasons EVs survive long enough to become affordable. It's a really strange time in this industry to be a car buyer, but it is pretty darn fascinating when you watch this whole industry evolve. And when you see some of the things that I've seen coming down the pipe from auto manufacturers, whether it's through the news or private meetings or things like this, everybody's going rugged. And some brands are going rugged and electrified and bolstering their hybrid portfolio. But I do find a good bit of humor in all those people that just rag on EV all the time, that are out there buying their well overpriced pickup truck and it's going, well, this is the future. Yes, your future is you hemorrhaging your $80,000 into one vehicle. I'm sorry, it doesn't cost that much to manufacture a pickup truck or an SUV anymore. But when we really sit back and we think about what the United States has done when it comes to things like emissions and it comes to safety, well, as I just stated, front driver and passenger safety, it is a concern, but it's not to the point where it used to be. It's not like driving around in your old, let's say, Lincoln Town car, getting into a collision and having the engine end up in your lap and the dashboard end up in your face. Yes, that actually happens. Hop on YouTube and look at some old videos. Back in the day, before we had things like the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, you can thank Ralph Nader for that, we had vehicles that were incredibly unsafe. If anybody's ever wondered why we don't have a lot of the Chinese manufactured vehicles here, well, one of the reasons is they can't pass a lot of our crash testing. Some of them, as I'm hearing as of late from like BYD, are incredibly safe. But the thing is that collectively, they've never actually been able to pass the muster of our tests. Now, when you take a look, for example, at Australia, you see the same thing happening. Identically to the United States. When you look at Japan, same thing. More ruggedized vehicles are coming out. And you're hearing this return of a V8 sports car, which I do chuckle inside a little bit, going, well, why the hell would you buy the V8 if that EV over there is smoking it like crazy? Well, because I want the noise. Yeah, and the high cost of running the vehicle, and I don't know. Me personally, I don't like buying slow cars, so why the heck am I going to go ahead and buy your V8 when I know that EV over there is going to smoke at 0 to 60 and going to decimate it in the quarter mile? But there will always be holdouts. But those holdouts, manufacturers have found a very unique way for the next few years here, probably the next 3 from today's date, to mold an industry that is already has the wheels turning. Manufacturers made insane investments into things like EV. And if they're building these brand new factories and they have software houses and data centers, custom AIs all being built to make their electrified future a reality, we should probably pay pretty close attention to what they're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years here. Because the new sports cars coming out are absolutely insane. Seriously, that new Toyota GR-GT, that's just Japanese sculpting bonkersness that is amazing. When you take a look at, for example, the new large SUVs that are more ruggedized coming out, heck, Kia's running commercials of that new Telluride online. Take a look at the thing. It's nuts. From a company that you never would expect to bring out a ruggedized vehicle, there is their X Pro. Holy smokes. Now, and then you start to take a look at what Jeep's doing. Jeep refined their brand, and now they have more of a hybridized type system. Now it's not, obviously not full electric. And then you look at what Ford's doing, and if you follow me long enough, you'll know that I pick on Ford a lot because Ford waffles. But even when Ford's like, hey, we're going to get rid of cars in our lineup for a bit here, I was very critical of them. And now, after doing some research, it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I'm like, people still want their old Taurus. And they really want like their dedication to what a Mustang actually is without having to pay stupid amounts of money. In all seriousness, a V8 that we've been manufacturing in a very similar style since the 50s, with a drivetrain and differentials that aren't very technologically advanced. You go ahead, shoot me an email, prove me wrong. But the thing is that we've been doing that stuff forever. And then all of a sudden, here comes EV and everybody's rejecting it. Well, how do you fund it and how do you keep your shareholders happy? Well, you mold a different future for everybody. A future that's currently profitable based on the current buying situation, and a future that's profitable based on individuals that have realized that we are hemorrhaging our bank accounts on gasoline, on diesel, on petrol. Let's move away from that. Because when we start to move away from that, all of a sudden, everything starts to change. You start to have customers come on in looking for vehicles that are better for the environment, looking for vehicles that are better for their family. And if you've seen some of the things that I've seen, one of the things that becomes very evident is that the family vehicle is coming back in force. You see, people don't want a minivan anymore, obviously. When it comes to station wagons, you're going to start to see those coming back. Bigger hatchbacks, they're coming back too. But all in all, you're going to see vehicles go very sport and you're going to go very rugged, even if you don't want that stuff in your vehicle. Because when you get ruggedization or you get sport, you get emotion. And emotion is the primary motivator to anybody buying anything. And if the customer comes in and all you have is a vanilla vehicle that's towing the boat anchor of mediocrity in some incredible ways, sure, you're getting great sales. But where's the excitement in there? Where's the profit? Where's the consultant that's going ahead and racking up a 4-pounder on the board and walking away with $1,000 paycheck? A lot of times it doesn't exist anymore. And it doesn't exist because many manufacturers are relying on old technologies to get us into the future. But when you start to find consultants that are making the coin, you find that coin is made off of the backbone of emotion. And when you have the ability to tap into that, all of a sudden you can show customers exactly what they want. Which is why I tell everybody that when it comes to hot buttons are garbage. They're garbage motivator tools. They're super, super old. They were made way back in the day, and nobody knows how to use them. When it comes to hot buttons are just indicators. They're generalized indicators that tell you, go deeper, dig deeper. Because one power and performance person is going to be very different from another. If you talk to myself, it used to be all about sports cars and tuning and ripping engines apart. And now it's drastically changed to how much can I tow and what can I climb. When I bump into a vehicle that I really enjoy, all of a sudden it's like, yes, give it to me. I want that. But it is based off of emotion. Heck, if you ask my wife, we would have, 500 cars in the driveway if every time we drove by a vehicle and I was like, oh, look at that, I want that. But it is wholly based on emotion. And if we as consultants, as managers, as owners started to recognize this emotional piece, all of a sudden we're going to find that we have customers coming in, sitting down in front of us that are buying at and above addendum because we're concentrating on emotion. And all of a sudden our profits increase. And when it comes to these vehicles, you'll see some dealers that will start to mark these things up. Now, I've never had an issue with addendum. I sold cars for a long time and I know what addendums do. But pay attention to how you flex these things. Because if you're a sales manager and you're putting a $15,000 addendum on your cars, really think it through. Is it greed or are you actually trying to help the customer? Because you don't want to sell just that one vehicle. You want to sell many over time. But many people know when a vehicle first comes out, if it's the sporty vehicle, it's ruggedized, something along those lines, well, I might have to pay a little bit more because nobody really actually has it out there. But if you're a dealer that's selling vehicles at 15,000 over and you're thinking to yourself, well, they're just not selling. The reason that they're not selling and your customers aren't coming back is because the locals all of a sudden got the word around that you're hosing customers and people don't want to be around that. So we got to remain competitive, but we can't really get greedy. Because here's the thing, greed is obvious, and greed, we can see it. Heck, open up the news. How much do you see every single day? I know my news feed for probably the first 10 finger flicks upward is nothing but people and greed, 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 greed. But when you start to get to things like generosity, and you start to get to things like helpfulness, and you start to get to caring and kindness, all of a sudden you start to see people investing more of themselves into it. And this is when we bring the customer on in. So if we're working with customers that really want this type of experience that gets them out, that gets them having fun, even if they're never going to do it, take some time and get to know what they want to do. It's not up to us to determine if they will actually ever do it, but it is up to us to look at them and go, hey, you know what? You can do it. And you can do it because I'm going to help you do it. I'm going to help you do it by getting you into a vehicle that is going to get your emotional state heightened. And emotions, they're directly connected to profit. And again, if you don't believe me, look at your manufacturer surveys. Why are they the way that they are? Why do they concentrate on CX? We go ahead and take a look at your Google reviews, your Facebook reviews. They're not honing in on areas where you're like, oh my gosh, price this or price that. They're not. Occasionally you might get one or two in there, but it's not all of them. It's about you and it's about treatment. And with the automotive industry setting up this fairly aggressive safety guardrail of let's pull out vehicles that should cost, let's say $35,000, and now let's sell them for $55,000 to $65,000. It should be pretty obvious that if you're starting to look at some of these ruggedized vehicles, consider looking at their EV counterpart. Consider looking at their hybrid counterpart. And I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look at the hybrids as of late, hybrids are dropping in price. The reason is they're catching on. And as something starts to catch on, like a hybrid sedan, all of a sudden people are going to jump on them. But as soon as you go to, let's say, an SUV, the price of that thing's going to go up to make sure that everything else can be funded. And our customers will always dream, and so will we. And this is one of the beautiful things about being human, is that when your customer is walking on in, we need to spend that time up front and get to know who they are. If you're not spending that time up front and getting to know who your customers are, as I've said many times, congratulations on your Mini, because that's what's going to happen. As a manager, I'm going to have to come out and cut the deal to get the customer into something so I can report to ownership that we actually did something today. But if you tap into those dreams, you tap into those desires, those things that the customer can see, like if I do this, things in my life will change for the better. Well, will they? Will they really? As a sales consultant or a manager or an owner, it's not up to me to determine that for you. But it is up to me to support it, and it is up to me to amplify it, and it is up to me to go ahead and say, you can do this, and get them to believe that this vehicle will provide them that capability. Now, if you're not part of the automotive industry and you're hearing this, you're going, well, that's not really fair to the buyer. Really? Take a look at your house. Do you need all of that crap around your house? That's insanely expensive. No. When you question, well, I can't pay for this, or I can't pay for that, or I can't pay my taxes. Look at what you do every day. Is it the products that you have? Is it the fact that maybe you're eating too much or you're eating out too much? Maybe it's the fact that you're drinking far too heavily. The thing is that when you start to look at what you spend your money on, all of a sudden you realize that you're doing it to make yourself happy. You're not doing it out of practicality. And customers are the same way. So when customers come in, understand that yes, every single person is going to be different. But with every single person being different, this means that the customer never actually changes because every story will be unique and every story will be different. And as consultants and as managers and as owners, when we have these like ebbs and flows in salary and pay and emotions, it's wholly based on our own personal headspace. It's not based on the customer. The customer never changes. Sure, it might be winter in the middle of Wisconsin and things are a little slow. The obvious is it's always slow. In the summer, it picks up. Why? Because it always picks up. It's nice outside. These are predictable things. But when it comes to the customer changing, the emotional driver behind every individual sits there. You need to spend 20 to 45 minutes during needs assessment to dig that out of them. And as soon as you do, they will give you the exact roadmap on how to sell them a car at profit. And it doesn't need to be the most expensive one out there. Remember, as soon as the customer gives you the information, sit down and think about why exactly I'm going to pull around the most expensive rig. Pull around the least expensive one. Show it to them as though it's the best model to meet their needs. Now, would that base model have all the ruggedized equipment on it of the newer SUVs coming out? Probably not. But you can inspire them to go, hey, you know what? I can do that. And yeah, some manufacturers want to suck up all that profit from adding the goodies onto the vehicle. But you can still look at the customer and go, hey, listen, we might be able to add some of that stuff on for you. Or we might be able to go ahead and maybe give you some guidelines into where you could find some of that really cool stuff that may even be better than what the manufacturers has going on. Because when you take a look at, for example, awesome suspension system, you got Fox out there, you got Old Man Emu, you have all these brands that produce some incredible items and in the suspensions and tire manufacturers that have incredible stuff like BF Goodwrench out there and a few others. The thing is that you can build a better car than what the manufacturers have coming out and you can pump the customer's emotion up. But if they want it all out of the wrapper as soon as they cross over the curb, you can offer that for them too. But just remember, your EVs, that soon is where the bread and butter is going to be. Familiarize yourself with them because this gas market, it's shrinking, it's shrinking, it's shrinking, it's shrinking. And most manufacturers right now, they're popping out 2 cylinders and they're making really big, awesome 4-cylinder power plants that are going to do all the cool things that V8s did in the past. This has been Andrew Sardone from Auto Nerd. Please go ahead and click that subscribe button right down below. You just get the latest and greatest out of me every single week. My channel is prioritized around beefing up CX in ways that the automotive manufacturing industry just hasn't taken a look at yet. And so today, it's pulling the wrap off of EVs and SUVs and showing you really what's going on behind the scenes. So click that subscribe button. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, andrew@autonerd.com. And make sure that when you are working with those customers, keep those adventure dreams alive. Wanderlust pays big dividends when you know who that individual is and you sell it properly on the vehicle. So have a great one. Go out there, spread the kindness, spread the caring, and I'll talk to you all next week.